everybody? We are going to do a live mock draft right here. Lucas Sweany, one of the best evaluators I know. He's been evaluating these prospects all year, and this is where we get to the fun part. We're not going to do a full 3-round one today. We'll do one round, see how long that takes, because we'll discuss each pick, and we'll switch off being the mock GM of how we think the draft will go, not how it should go, because I think stuff is becoming more clear. And yeah, we'll do that, and it'll be a fun little stream right here, and it'll be good. So, Lucas, you can hear me all right?
Yeah, thanks, man. You're too kind. I love when you pump me up in front of your audience.
What's great is they can actually see the mock draft too. It's not just us.
Awesome.
I believe everybody can see it too. So, which is really nice. So when I go to another screen and we do this, like if I move it, there. Look at that. That'll probably be nicer because everyone can see the full screen there. It should move, right? Did it move on top for you? The top?
Yeah, I did a little bit. I can see the picks now. So perfect.
Cool. So without further ado, we'll start and we'll discuss every pick on how we think it's going to go. And I guess I'll start at 1. And I don't think this is already a done deal. It's got to be, obviously you can see on PFF, they haven't updated their newest rankings, but Titans are going to select Cam Ward. I think everybody in the industry knows that that's the pick. They canceled their meetings with Shedeur Sanders. So we're going to go Cam Ward, pick 1. I don't think I love Cam Ward personally. I think he's one of the better players in this draft. I have him ranked just outside the top 10, and that's not disrespectful overall. I'm not saying for quarterbacks he's the QB1, but it's one of those drafts where Cam Ward might be one of the worst picks first overall. I wouldn't say in NFL history, but maybe the last 10, 15 years in terms of just the position in general, because we're getting to a point where it's supply and I love Cam Ward. That's probably disrespectful to say, but it's supply and demand, right, Lucas? Like Cam Ward has the upside to be, I think, a better Geno Smith. And Geno Smith's a pretty damn good quarterback. I'm saying that's at his peak. I think his floor is maybe a little better Will Levis, because he's going to throw 20 picks in year 1 in Tennessee. Right?
Yeah. I mean, I think that it's definitely a positional value thing with the Titans taking Cam Ward at 1. It seems like that's the route they're going to be going with it. It's not necessarily what I would do. I just think that if you're Brian Callahan, if you're Mike Borgonzi, the new GM, you're kind of hitching your wagon to Cam Ward, to him with this pick. If this pick doesn't work, that might be it for you, with your job. So you really need to make this work with Cam Ward if you're going to draft him. I just think that you could go other routes at the position with the kind of weak infrastructure that you have around the QB position right now. I just think it's going to be a tough environment for Cam Ward to be successful in. Like you said, Geno Smith has kind of been my comp all along, my 70 to 80 percentile comp for Cam Ward, like what he can get to. But like you said, with the infrastructure around him, we could see, a little more Will Levis, Jameis Winston type play out of him, which isn't what you want to see with your first overall pick of the draft. I just think there's more blue chip players available and they should be doing that, but they're not going to, so that's my notes on number 1. I think at number 2, the Browns, there was a while, there were kind of a couple weeks ago where everybody was saying, oh, they're going to be taking Abdul Carter, pairing him up with Myles Garrett. But it's kind of, the pendulum has kind of swung over to Travis Hunter, the other top prospect right now. And ultimately, I think that's where they're going to go. I think that's where they should go if this is how the draft board played out, which it probably will with Ward going 1. I think the Browns should go Hunter 2. So, yeah, that's going to be my pick. It's just you have the potential to be the most valuable player in the league a couple of years from now. If he can stay healthy, if he can play 70% on offense with also playing, putting up Pro Bowl level numbers at corner, that is a type of player that we have not seen in the NFL in, 50 plus years probably. So the ceiling is unbelievable with Travis Hunter. People are finally starting to come around to see how generational of a player he really is. this is the player like that you refer to as generational. I know that people have been saying, or that there's a lot of people out there in the draft space who don't like when people refer to players as generational. When was the last time you saw a two-way player? That is literally the definition of a generational player. So
I'm with you there. I mean, I think it's applicable to like a Shohei Ohtani in baseball. And there were questions. Say what you want about Shohei now, but there were questions about him legitimately hitting MLB pitching. There were guys all the time that say he
yeah,
can't hit MLB pitching. He's just a pitcher, really. And not only did he finish second or third in Cy Young voting a few years ago before he got his second TJ, when he was on the Angels, won MVP, consistent 40 plus home run dude every single year, 50 plus stolen bases last year, numerous MVPs. It's almost like unfair because he's so valuable. He probably wins the most valuable player every single year if he even throws 50 innings. Because then it's like, okay, it's 50 home runs, he hits 300, and he threw 50 innings. Like, it's kind of ruins the value of the award. I think Hunter could be similar. The only difference is there's no quarterback position in baseball versus like football. Like pitchers are very valuable in baseball, and I would like build my team around pitching as well. But like the quarterback is the cornerstone of your team, right? And he's not a quarterback. That's literally the only downside about Travis Hunter and why Tennessee would even think about taking Cam Ward first overall, right?
yeah,
So, but realistically, I think Travis Hunter is a generational talent. I agree with you, Lucas. I think the term generational gets thrown around a lot. I used it with Caleb Williams, and people are going to be like, well, how can you be a generational talent in back-to-back years? There can be multiple generational talents within a generation, even though it's an oxymoron. Like the term means like, it's like when Brady was playing with Peyton Manning and Aaron Rodgers. Those are three generational talents within a single generation. And we don't see any Tom Brady right now in the league. You can say Patrick Mahomes, but look at his Super Bowl stats. They aren't great. He really should have lost the first Super Bowl to the Niners, probably the second Super Bowl to the Niners. And should have even lost the one against the Eagles, right? But Jalen Hurts outplayed him in that, and he got outplayed by Jimmy Garoppolo almost in that first Super Bowl. So again, I think we use it a little loosely, a generational talent, but I think Travis Hunter is indicative of that for sure. So pick 3 gets interesting because the Giants could absolutely take Shedeur Sanders because of the supply and demand problem we have in the National Football League. But I don't think there's any way at pick 3 you pass up Abdul Carter. That's going to be the pick. I know they have Kayvon Thibodeau. They have Brian Burns, who had a down year, who's poised for a comeback year. But if I'm the New York Giants, there is no way I'm passing on Abdul Carter or Travis Hunter at 3. Shedeur Sanders is fine as a prospect. And yes, quarterbacks are more valuable. So you'll see them going higher in the draft than they realistically should. But at the end of the day, the best player available is the guy you take. They have Russell Wilson, sure, 1 year, whatever. They can figure out the quarterback position in next year's draft when you have 5 or 6 quarterbacks that could come out that could be all better than Shedeur Sanders, right? To me, there's no point in reaching for a 3rd overall pick in Shedeur Sanders. And I'm not saying he's going to be a bad quarterback. I think his floor is substantial. Like, I think he has a high floor. Like, I think he could probably start and do okay right away. I don't think he's as much bust potential as other quarterback prospects, but the upside is so limited to me, unless you have a guy like Cam Ward. At least you can warrant saying, look, the guy has the arm talent of a Caleb Williams type of guy, or he can go out of pocket and extend plays, and what we typically want to see out of game-changing quarterbacks. He at least has that. Shedeur doesn't have that. I saw something like today on a PFF like post, best out of structure player at quarterback, Shedeur Sanders. I'm like, did they not watch this? You know what game? I was going to say the F word. Like, what are you talking about? He's not mobile. He's not his father. I don't know. Maybe his mom was with the mailman. I don't know, because Deion's not. No offense. Like, I mean, Deion's quick as what, but like Shedeur Sanders is not quick at all, right? Like, I'm just saying here, like, he doesn't have prime speed. He has Prime's instincts and Prime's confidence, which I think are good for New York City. But I just don't see him as a first-round talent. And that's no offense. The only quarterback I'd be comfortable taking in the first round is Cam Ward in this specific draft.
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, I agree with you there. I think Shedeur, there is a floor with him for sure because of the accuracy. I think the accuracy is up there amongst the top of the quarterbacks in this class. Probably him and Dart are the most accurate guys. Cam Ward not quite on their level, but Shador, just the sack problem is just such a problem. And that is an absolute QB killer when it comes to guys trying to project from college to the NFL, is when they face even freakier athletes on defense and just the pressure gets really, really difficult to deal with immediately. So, yeah, I mean, I think the Giants, they took 2 shots on QBs this offseason on free agents, and they're even more win now than the Titans because of Daboll and Joe Shane's need to win, or else they're going to be gone if they don't win this year. So I think the way to do that is, get a veteran at the position and get a blue chip player at 3 rather than taking a risky pick at 3 and missing out on a potential blue chip on defense. So that's where I would go to. That's where I expected to go. With the Patriots at 4, I think that what I'm hearing right now, it feels like it's probably going to be Will Campbell. And that pick is a little reminiscent of Vrabel's last first round pick with the Titans. And that was Peter Skoronski back in 2023, who he took at 8, who was a tackle with short arms like Will Campbell, and ultimately moved inside to guard and has been pretty solid at guard for the Titans. So with Will Campbell, I could see it very similarly. They might test him out at tackle, see how that goes. But I think that there's a definite floor of being a legitimately good guard in the NFL for Will Campbell.
So
So
you're
I
taking
think
Will
that that'll
Campbell.
be, yes, I'm going to be taking Will Campbell. I think Membu, there's a chance with him, but I think that Campbell feels a lot more like a Vrabel player, and
Yeah.
the smoke to me has been a little more towards Will Campbell lately than Membu. So
It's funny because if I were in your position with this 4th overall pick, I would have selected Armand Membu. I think that's going to be the pick. I think it's a bit safer. I think he can stick at tackle. There's a fair point that was brought up to me on Twitter, or X rather, can't really call it Twitter anymore, a few weeks ago, and it was, or a few days ago rather, and it was like, okay, when's the last time they produced an elite player? And if you think about it, it's like Alden Smith, like, you know what I mean? Like Burden and Membu have the chance to be amazing, but to me, it's like, okay, that is a valid point. Like, it's a valid point. Like, Missouri just hasn't produced NFL talent in years, right? So, like, I get why people are a little concerned. Membu's a bit small. He's 6'3", like 6'4". If you put him on some tap shoes or something and get a little heel in there or something, you know what I'm saying? Like, he's small. Like, to me, this is a really weak class and for offensive linemen, true offensive linemen, excellent guard class, right? Like, I'm sorry, but like if I'm picking 4, I'm a big rah guy with, like, as long as you can play football, you can play football. But at some point, we have to look at the metrics. Like Will Campbell's, he gets beat inside. His hand length is too small. The size is there, whereas Membu is bigger arms but smaller, but might have to put on. Yeah, I just don't want a guy have to put tap shoes on and some heels to play tackle. By the 4th overall pick. I'm sorry. Like this is just such a weak class compared to the mammoth of men last year with Joe Alt, Fashanu, even Fuaga, who Membu projects a little similarly, I think, to Fuaga because he was like, 6'3", 6'4" as well. I'm still banking on Membu's arm length, though. So I would personally have selected Membu there, and that's how I think it will go. I mean, look, if I was the GM, I'd select Genti there. That's a wrong, like, people would be like, oh, that's crazy. Like, why would you take a running back 4? I just think he's a game changer. I think you can figure out this is a deep guard and O-line class. Like Wyatt Milam, who's going to be an all-pro guard in the National Football League, is projected around 3 right now. Like, and you can get a guard later. And if Campbell or Membu is going to play guard anyways, why the heck are you taking a guard there? I always bring that. I mean, I know you probably agree with me, Lucas, there. Like, I'm not saying Campbell can't stick at tackle or Membu sticks at tackle, but you look at all these guys that are like, the only guy that's a legitimate tackle that's first round right now that people are talking about is Josh Simmons and Connerly. And it's like, those guys have a lot of question marks, so they're not going to be selected higher than Membu or Campbell, right?
Yeah, I agree. I mean, it's tough trying to find a left tackle in this class, like a true day one starting left tackle. And I'm sure that's what the Patriots are going to hope they can get with Campbell or Membu if they go with them at 4 rather than, surrendering immediately and moving him into guard. So I think that they're probably going to be looking to play them at tackle. I think Membu is more likely to stick at tackle because of his. I mean, Campbell is a great athlete too, but Membu, the athleticism is top notch. And I think he has the length for it. Campbell, little short on the arm length, but there have been good left tackles with 32.8-inch arms before, or 33, if that's what we're saying Campbell had at his pro day. So I think
Yeah.
ultimately it'll be one of those two. I think they're desperate for help on that O-line to protect Drake May. So
I'm with you there, man. I'm with you there. So I'm on pick 5. This one's a little interesting. Okay. I think this is locked. Personally, I don't think Gladstone's an idiot. He was the guy in on Puka Nacua for the Rams. He was the guy that made a lot of good picks, even though he looks like he's 10 years old. He knows football. Mason Graham. This is one of those things you turn on the tape and you don't even look at the metrics. Sure, Walter Nolan's a better athlete. Shamar Stewart's a better athlete. You look at the D lineman, like Derek Harmon's probably a better athlete. But if we're talking pure production and just finesse and everything you could want in an interior defensive lineman in the NFL for a star, it's Mason Graham. And I think this is applicable to what happened with Aiden Hutchinson a few years ago, where he wasn't the go-to at number 1 because people are like, well, he's not as fast as like a Trayvon Walker. He's not. I know they play different positions, like one's an IDL and one's a D end, right? But I think it's similar in the sense where we overlooked the dominance and the production in college and the finesse and just kind of were like, oh, well, he's just not as quick as these other guys. To me, I don't give a shit about any of that. You can play defensive tackle at a high level. You got the college production. And by the way, you look at his stats, every single big game he stepped up. Every single game in his college career. That was like a huge game. Ohio State twice, national championship, national semifinal a few years ago. And that goes for Will Johnson too. I'm tired of people putting Jahdae Barron above Will Johnson. I think they're smoking crack. Personally, I don't understand. No, and I like Jahdae Barron a lot. He's a nickel. He can play, I think, multiple coverages. He fits certain schemes a little better. But Will Johnson's an alpha corner. I don't know. I'm a little infatuated with the 6'2", 6'3" corners that can just man-to-man demons, right? And that have great ball skills. So I love Will Johnson. And Jahdae is more of a gadget, which is fine. He can play in multiple coverages, and I think he'll be good. But it's a similar thing. You know what I mean, Lucas, in the sense where Mason Graham, you turn on the tape, it's there. He's great. He's excellent. There's nothing to see. There's no reason to draft any other defensive lineman ahead of him.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think Mason Graham's clearly the number 1 defensive lineman. I think it's a super deep D-line class too, and you can find a lot of starters. So, there is maybe a possibility that the Jaguars think in that way that they should maybe wait a round or two before they go D-line, but you can't. I mean, Mason Graham is arguably the top guy left on the board at this point, and I think that Gladstone coming from the Rams is going to be big on BPA over need. I think the one thing that could prevent this Mason Graham pick from happening would be if Liam Cohen gets a little more involved in making the pick there, considering he's an offensive guy coming over from Tampa, and he might want to get an offensive guy to start his tenure as the Jaguars head coach. And he could get a really good running back. So that's something I think to keep your eyes peeled for, but Mason Graham can't go wrong with that pick, I don't think. So,
okay. So here's where it gets interesting. Pick 6, you're drafting here, Lucas.
Yeah.
What are you thinking here?
I think that
in here, but let's
yeah, see. I think we probably agree with who this pick is. I think there are ways that it could go. Like I said, with the Vrabel and Skoronski thing, with the last pick with the Patriots and picking Will Campbell, back in 2023, the Seahawks were picking number 5. Pete Carroll was the head coach, who is now the head coach of the Raiders. And they picked Devin Witherspoon, who might have been thought as a teeny bit of a reach at that point. He was a guy who was regularly going mid-teens in mock drafts, I think, around there. And he was a ferocious physical nickel cornerback. So I don't think that it would be out of the realm of possibility for them to consider Jahdae Barron here. I really like Jahdae Barron. I think he's going to be a great player. He's one of the guys I'm most confident about defensively that is going to be a really good player. I just think the makeup is amazing. Plus the film, the numbers are all good. But I think that Genty is on another level as a prospect. I think Genty is one of the very few blue chip players in this class. He's available, and the Raiders have a significant need at running back. So I think Genty's going to be the pick. I think there's ways they could go, but ultimately Genty's who I think they're going to take here if this is the way the board shakes out.
I'd have to agree there. I really think that Genty is definitely the pick there. I'd be shocked if they take anyone else. Like Membu, I get there. Will Campbell, like I can see that, or even Jade or Will. But I think, the Raiders GM brought something up a few weeks ago that was pretty crazy. And he was saying his 10-year-old son said he's going to be so mad and not be a Raider fan if they don't take Ashton Genty. And I know he's 10 and he's probably but I'm sure this is the best of both worlds where he thinks Genty's the best prospect there and he gets to make his son happy. I think Ashton Genty's a Raider. I agree.
Yep. I agree.
We'll
I think it's a fairly easy pick to make here. I just think that there are other ways they could go. They met with Barron, they met with Will Johnson. O-line could be a possibility, but they got some nice young dudes on that O-line. So
you want to guess where I go here, where I go next? You want to take a guess? The Jets could go in a variety of directions, but where do you think I'm going with this?
I don't know. I think you're probably going to say Warren. I could see Membu maybe, but I think you're going to say Warren.
By the way, those are the only two guys I have mocked to them ever. So Ty Warren's going to be the pick for the Jets. I think, they've got a need at tight end. Conklin isn't going to save you. He's not going to be your knight in shining armor. And I don't even know. Did he sign elsewhere? I don't even know if they even have Tyler Conklin.
He went to the Chargers. He signed with the Chargers.
They don't even have a tight end, right? But I'm just saying a guy like Tyler Conklin, who they had last year, is not going to save them. Take Ty Warren. Yes, you need another offensive lineman. It would be nice to pair Olu with somebody long-term right on that O-line because they have a need there. I can even see defensive line personally, but I think you go best player available there. I know people are infatuated with Loveland, but I think Warren's in his own tier. As much as I love Loveland, I think Warren's just more of a football player's football player. Reminds me a lot of George Kittle, like a lot in the sense where he catches everything, mismatch nightmare, and something he does that George doesn't do is he can take snaps out of the backfield and run. I think he's a bit quicker than George. I think it's a home run pick. If you're the Jets and you're trying to give Justin Fields something to work with, can't just be Garrett Wilson and some bums, right? You need somebody else. And bums, but they're NFL players, but you get what I mean. Like, you know what I mean? Like they don't have a wide receiver too. Like I
think the Jets are just so needy. I mean, I don't think the Jets are in a good position at all. I think that they're very much on the brink of being in a full rebuild. They have some blue chip young talents on their team, but other than that, the roster is pretty bare. And you're going with a major question mark at QB with Justin Fields. And yeah, I mean, I don't know. I think Warren is one of the best players left available. So I'm a big advocate for BPA. But I mean, tight end at 7 is rich for sure.
But I think Brock Bowers last season, it only gives teams more confidence to take a player high because Bowers went way lower than we thought, right?
Yeah, I agree. I think Warren is going to go high too, and I think he probably will be worthy of that pick. It's just really hard to see a team like the Jets do it, I would think, because I mean the Jets really realistically could be picking 1-1 next year. Like I would not be shocked.
Anytime you have Justin Fields at quarterback, you have a chance to be picking 1-1. Doesn't matter what the rest of your team looks like. I'm completely out on him as a processor. As an athlete, excellent. But he has like the same problem Milroe has. Like his second level processing is just atrocious and it's never gotten better. You know what I mean? Which is why like drafted Milroe is like a complete like, have we learned anything about the Anthony Richardson, Justin Fields type of players? Like Lamar Jackson can actually read a defense. That's the difference between an athletic runner who can also play quarterback. Those guys are just athletes that can't play quarterback, right? That's basically the difference there. Pick 8, where are you going? Because Carolina can go a variety of directions.
Yeah, so I'm not really gonna like this pick because I think that ultimately the position they're gonna take, this is not the guy who they're gonna take too is not who I would take. I think that this is gonna be the right position, but I would go a different route with the pick. Ultimately, the pick is Jalen Walker. They've been super linked to him throughout this draft process. They've just been all over him apparently, and it's been all over social media and everything. Um, Ultimately, I think that, if I was making this pick, I would probably look at Mike Green or even Shamar Stewart with the insane upside that he could give at the position compared to a guy like Jalen Walker. I just don't really see it as much with Walker. I would have loved to get some testing numbers on him because that could have made me a little more in on him potentially, but the production is not amazing. I think Tet McMillan is also in the realm here of a possibility, but ultimately, I think the way free agency went, it seems to me that the Panthers are a lot more focused on building up the defense with the high value assets, and I think they should too because I'm bullish on Coker, especially Leggett. I like Leggett too, and Thielen. I mean, that is a good starting three receivers. Like, I don't think that you need to bring in a different starting receiver right now. I think they could use a wide receiver one, but I think all three of those players are starter level players, and it would kind of hurt to relegate one of those dudes to the bench. Especially if it's Coker or Leggett, one of their young talents that
Yeah.
needs reps to develop and to maybe be a potential wide receiver one. So yeah, I think Jalen Walker, I think edge is the right move here. They had a very, very bad defense last year, like really historically bad. So they need whatever they can to help take some pressure off of the offense, which showed flashes at the end of the year. So I think
Yeah.
Walker.
Yeah, that makes sense. So I picked Jalen Walker there. Who do you think I'm taking at 9? Who do you think's going to go 9? Because I think you were the big proponent of this. Like, you were the person I think that first said that the Saints would be going quarterback here. I think it's
Yeah.
all but inevitable if Shedeur Sanders is there that they're taking Shedeur Sanders. I'm not saying it's the right pick. I just think like the Saints at 9, they have more needs than a quarterback. Like, let's be real, they're in cap hell. They'll be in cap hell for a decade. They probably won't win another Super Bowl while we're still alive. Maybe. I mean, that's how bad they've screwed up that organization. They don't really have many impact players. They could be picking 1-1 next year, especially if they go Shedeur Sanders at 9. But I do think learning from Derek Carr is an important thing for a young quarterback because, Derek Carr is kind of getting towards that washed phase. But what was he really good at throughout his career? He's an excellent pocket passer. What is Shedeur good at? Pocket passing, right? So, like, I feel like he could take that to another level and kind of learn from Carr in the sense of how to handle game to game and preparation. Because people forget Carr was an MVP candidate just like 4 or 5 years ago. Like, it wasn't that long ago. I'm not saying he was an excellent quarterback, but he led the Raiders to the playoffs when they didn't really have a coach. And I think people forget that really quickly. I do think they end up taking Shedeur Sanders here. So I'm going to lock that pick in. I'm not saying it's the right pick. I'd probably go Tet McMillan just with Olave's injury history. He keeps getting hurt and concussed like every single year. And then, I'd also look at Shamar Stewart, I think could be a sleeper pick there. I could even see Kenneth Grant that high, to be honest. I don't buy Kenneth Grant's fall. Like, I think Kenneth Grant's locked into top 17 personally.
Yeah, I mean, I think that the Saints are another one of those teams similar to the Jets where they're getting. I mean, the Saints took a different path to this position, but their roster is getting old. They are not in a good cap position. There's needs all over the place, and you go quarterback is kind of interesting. But that's what It's what I've heard. I've heard that they've been linked to Shedeur. If he falls, if they think he's falling like this and they think that they're going to catch a falling star, sure. Derek Carr would probably be a good quarterback for him to learn under, like you said. So yeah, I could definitely see this pick. As a former Saints fan, I don't know. I was a diehard Saints fan when Drew Brees was there. I don't know if I would still even consider myself a Saints fan because I haven't really been following them really very much in the last 4-5 years now since Brees retired. So it wouldn't really, if I was still diehard for the Saints, I wouldn't like this pick is just what I'll say about it.
Yeah, I think the whole fan base is with you there. What are you going to be doing with the next pick? Pick 10 is interesting because at this point, Ashton Genty's off the board, right? Bears really figured out a lot of offensive line in the last throughout free agency. I mean, sure they could go Membu here.
Yeah,
I've been
I am
thinking,
having
yeah.
a
What do you
tough
think?
time.
Mike
I'm having
Green,
a tough
maybe?
time making a decision on this pick. I'm trying to look and see at the guys that they've been linked to when it comes to visits and interest. And, they appear to have been all over Will Campbell and Ashton Genty, who are both gone. They were all over Jalen Walker. He's gone. So if you look at those positions, O-line, running back, edge is probably what they're considering here. I've heard O'Marion Hampton here. I know they like him, but man, at 10, and to be fair, the Lions did do this 2 years ago, taking Jahmyr Gibbs at 12, where it was kind of a reach. And with Ben Johnson coming in as the head coach, I don't know, man. I feel like I'm talking myself into this, but at the same time, they have really they beefed that O line up in free agency. So, maybe they don't really need to take a guy like Membu here. Oh man. I think it's I guess I'd go Membu here. Honestly, let's go Membu because
Okay.
I just think that with what the Bears have, I think they're going to take a running back, but I think I think Ben Johnson likes more of that Gibbs style mold speed back type player, and O'Marion Hampton seems more like what their David Montgomery would be. And that, in my opinion, could easily be Roshan Johnson still. So I think they'd be better off with a duo of like Roshan Johnson and Travion Henderson in round 2 than they would be with O'Marion Hampton and I don't know who their speed back would necessarily be because I don't really think it's going to be Swift because Ben Johnson already kicked him out of town once. So I just have a hard time imagining that they're going to bring him back. So yeah, we're going to go Armand Membu. We're going to get another he probably wouldn't play immediately. He'd probably be more of a developmental pick, which is kind of what he is. He's a project type offensive lineman. He was great at Missouri, but he's a freak athlete with a high ceiling. And ultimately, this could be Ben Johnson's Penei Sewell type player, that like real legit anchor at tackle on the O line. So yeah, I like the pick. I like the pick there.
So this is where it gets interesting because now I'm at the Niners pick. And Membu is the guy that I think they would take if he was there, but he goes a pick before. Jalen Walker, they've been linked to. He's gone. Even though I don't get the Jalen Walker. I have Will Campbell linked to. He's gone. Mason Graham, of course, gone. They would take him. They've been linked to Walter Nolan a lot, but Walter Nolan's falling off a cliff. So I don't think that the Niners really care because Kinlaw was considered a reach when they took him a few years ago. But when the Walter Nolan's projected in the 30s right now, I don't think they would take that much quote unquote of a reach. I think they would just trade back up to get him. So I think here I haven't heard anything about their link to Mike Green. I've heard a lot of this guy. I think this is who they're linked to right now, and this is who they're going to take. And it's Mikal Williams from Georgia. And I would hate that pick. I think it would be a horrible pick. I don't like Saleh with projects because look at what happened with his last project with Javon Kinlaw. He turned out to be a horrible NFL player comparatively to where he was drafted. I would prefer Will Johnson there. If you're going to just take Mikal Williams, I'm like, okay, just take Will Johnson. Just take him. Just take someone. Or Jade. Jade is pretty NFL ready. I would even be fine with that, Lucas. And then you go D line in round 2. But I think from what I've gathered, they had a one-on-one meeting with Mikal Williams. He visited the team. They've been linked to him the entire process. They like him a lot. Fits their bigger edge rusher. I don't know how. I think you'd have to be smoking crack again to take Mikal Williams over James Pierce and Mike Green. But maybe they are smoking a little crack. Maybe it'll be good crack. I don't know. But I'm just saying, I don't care if James Pierce shows up with anorexia in camp. I think he's a top 10 player from this draft. I don't give a shit how skinny he is. You know what I mean? James Pierce can play football at a high level.
I like James Pierce so much. I would be shocked to see him
that's
go.
Their MO. Niners like bigger edge rushers. Yeah. The only edge rushers they'd be considering here were Mikal Williams, Nick Scourton, and probably Landon Jackson.
Probably
Shamar,
Shamar.
I could see Shamar here too, but I think they really like Mikal Williams. I think there's at least more production with Williams than Shamar. Shamar, I would probably just break my TV at that point. Even though I love Shamar Stewart, it's just like I don't trust the Niners to develop him. I kind of want Shamar to go to like, I don't know, like Dallas would be pretty sick. Like if he went there, or somewhere that has like a legitimate like developmental track for D linemen. I guess who would be the next few picks?
Hey, that's a great segue into this 12th pick here,
All right,
because I think
let me just set up. Okay, so I set the pick there. Okay, who does Dallas take, Lucas?
I think so. It would be, oh man, I mean, I feel like if you're a Dallas fan right now and you see Tedero McMillan falling the way he is, you think, oh, we have to be taking him here. Like, they've been linked to him. They really need a wide receiver too. I mean, they don't have the number 2 option behind CeeDee Lamb. That's Jake Ferguson right now. They've been experimenting with Jalen Tolbert, Kavonte Turpin. They just don't have a number 2 wide receiver option. However, I mean, I've heard that, I'm sure a lot of people have heard this, that the grades on Tedero McMillan are very polarizing throughout the league. You know, I think he's a top 10 guy for sure, without a doubt. But there was that whole out of context thing about him in an interview as a freshman saying, "Oh, I don't watch film, so now everybody hates him and they think he's lazy all of a sudden because of something that was taken out of context from 2 or 3 years ago." I don't think they're going to take him. I think he's going to fall a little bit, which will be unjustified. I think ultimately, I think he's going to be a great player. But I think it's going to be Shamar Stewart. That's going to be my pick here. They've been linked to him. They had him in on a 30 visit. I think this is a very, very good landing spot for Shamar Stewart, because Micah Parsons being on the opposite side of the line, that takes so much pressure off of Shamar Stewart. I think it's going to be tough for Shamar to develop in the league if he goes to a spot where he has to be that number 1 guy that's going to be drawing double teams right off the bat. If he can get his 1v1s early on and just beat them with pure athleticism, I think he's going to have a chance to develop into a really good player eventually. And I think Dallas is a really good spot for that to happen. So I think he's arguably the top player left on the board at this point. One of them, I still like McMillan more. And they have bigger needs, but BPA, and they've been linked to him. So
I like it. I think that's why I had that segue. I kind of figured you would be going Shamar Stewart there. I know you were pretty high on him after that combine. I think everybody is. And the thing is with Shamar Stewart, which, I don't think people really give him enough credit with what he accomplished with his freakish athleticism at the combine. Like he completely dominated that combine. And I know, like, oh, dominated a combine. Like, what the fuck are you talking about? It's a combine. But it's like the stats weren't there in college. They played a weird system at Texas A&M. And it didn't just hurt him. It hurt guys like Scourton. Didn't they have Walter Nolan too? Am I tripping? Before,
yeah, he was at Texas A&M,
and
yeah.
they screwed him over too, which is why he transferred. By the way, that Ole Miss D line was nasty. I don't know how they didn't make the college football playoff with Ivy, Nolan, Chris Paul Jr. at linebacker, Princely, all those guys like that.
Yeah, they had some dudes, that's for sure.
But I agree with you. I think Shamar needs to go to a place like Dallas where Micah can kind of teach him. And I would hate that long term as a fan of the Niners, because Dallas would be really good defensively for years to come with those 2 guys as their cornerstones. But I think for Shamar, I think that would help his development immensely. So I'm there with you. This pick is, like, to me, is really interesting. I had Malachi Starks to them for a long time. But I'm just kind of looking at this board, and I just don't see like a scenario where Mike McDaniel doesn't take a tackle here, especially with who's on the board. Personally, I know there's some.
Ron Armstead just retired, so their main protector for Tua.
Exactly.
So
I think here, I'm going to make it pretty simple. I think you know where I'm going here. You're going to go Kelvin Banks. They need both a guard and a tackle. He can play both. Maybe he sticks at guard eventually and becomes an all-pro guard. I'm actually pretty high in Kelvin Banks. I think he's excellent in pass pro. I really rarely gave him a minus on anything that we said. Reactive athleticism, he's excellent on. He's got pretty quick feet. His PFF run grade could be a little better. Like, I want him to turn into a better run guy in the NFL. But he's excellent in pass pro, man, and he's just a big dude. He's just a big boy. Whether he has to play guard or tackle, I don't think really matters for the Dolphins. They have needs at both. I don't think there's any other pick there. I guess you could take Jahdae Barron. Like I could see them if Jahdae or Will Johnson's there, which they both are in this mock specifically. They could take him, one of those guys. But I think you got to take tackle here. Do you agree?
I think the Dolphins would be an amazing scheme for him to go to also, where he can just be a outside zone guy where he can just get outside and block for Achane running those stretches, those outside zone runs. I think that ultimately this would be a very good pick for the Dolphins, who desperately need to help Tua, but not just Tua, help the run game too. The run game was so inefficient because, I mean, Achane was just swarmed immediately every single play last year, especially when Tua was out, because there was no respect to the passing game with Huntley and Skylar Thompson back there. So yeah, I think they have some serious needs, especially on the O-line, and I love the Banks pick for him. It's who I would pick if I was picking here for them as well. I mean, I like Banks a lot too.
I think Banks is a pretty safe prospect, on the contrary to a lot of people. Like I think Banks is definitely a 10-year career guy. Like I think like it's pretty like it doesn't matter whether it's at guard or tackle. I think he'll be a solid player for 10 plus years. And I think when you need that stability on an offensive line like Miami does, you don't want Tua to get murdered out there because he's had like 45 concussions. Like I think you got to go offensive line, which is why you go Kelvin Banks. Like I to be honest, like I'm not trying to say like Miami's front office doesn't know what they're doing. They've prioritized wide receivers and their quarterback and corners in the past with Jalen Ramsey, and they've just completely disregarded their offensive line, and that's why they have 0 playoff wins, in the last how many years. Like, hey, you need a line, bro. Like even the Bills, bro. People thought the Bills would be horrible last year. Their offensive line was fantastic, which is why they were able to win so many games, especially in run protection, because James Cook had an excellent year, and the holes there were unreal. Pause, but you know what I'm saying there, they really locked in there with the Bills did, and that's why they made that run. And I think the Niners got to do a similar thing at some point too, where their line you can't have 37-year-old Trent Williams there only and Dominic Pooney. Like you need a bunch of guys. So who do you have at pick 14? Obviously Warren's off the board. Do you go Loveland here? What do you do, Lucas?
So I was between two guys here with this pick at 14, and you picked Banks, and that's who I was thinking. The Colts lost 2 starters on their O-line in free agency this year. They're both interior guys, so they could be looking to find a starter eventually in the draft, and I think Banks would have been a pretty good fit for him with being a good athlete, and Chris Ballard loves drafting athletes. I think that there'd be a possibility of a guy like Will Johnson here, but they invested pretty heavily in the secondary and free agency. Charvarius Ward being the biggest signing for them. So I think they're going to stay away from that too. They've been linked to Loveland, so that's my pick. I'm going to go Colston Loveland. It is a serious need at tight end. It's one of the top players on the board still, and they have been linked to him. So that's just kind of a trifecta there where it's a pretty easy pick in my mind. I think Jim Harbaugh would be a little bit disappointed. I think there's a real possibility the Chargers are trying to trade up, to a position like 13 if this is how the board is shaping up. But obviously we're not doing trades. So the way this falls out, it's going to be Loveland to the Colts here. And they get hopefully their safety valve for Richardson going forward, or Daniel Jones. I sure hope it's not Daniel Jones, but
they should just let Richardson learn how to read defenses, bro. The problem is we give up on quarterbacks too soon. He really should have never declared. They should have never given him the okay, you're going to be a first round pick, because you need to play 30 college games to be NFL ready minimum, right? And he played 11. So I get the talent's there. I'm not out on him yet, but he definitely needs more PT for sure. For sure.
Agreed.
Okay. So pick 15, I'm going to be pretty simple here. I think they go edge rusher. I don't think there's any scenario they don't go edge rusher, not even Jahad Campbell, not even with McMillan falling here. I don't think they're going to take a receiver. I think they go Mike Green. I think it's either James Pierce, Mike Green, Mikal Williams. One of those guys will be a Falcon there at 15. They've disregarded the position for so long, the Falcons have. They've disregarded it completely. I think it's time to finally lock in and draft an edge rusher, because they've just... I know they've signed some guys in the past. They made that trade, obviously, with the Patriots for Judon, right? But at the end of the day, I just think they need more, man. I think they need more, and I think they need a guy like
Yeah.
Mike Green. I get the character concerns, like the sexual assault, like charges, or not charges, they were dropped, obviously, but like the character issues and concerns. If you look at the tape, like Mike Green is a special player. So I think that's got to be the pick for the Falcons at 15.
Yeah, I think they've been linked to him too. That's a serious, serious need. I think that's a good decision here, and that's probably the way they're going to go as well here. So at 16, the Cardinals are up here, and looking at it here on their visits, it seems like there's kind of one obvious guy who they're going to go with here, based on the way the board's shaping up, and it's a guy who might be falling a little bit, and that's going to be Will Johnson at corner. Their defense not looking great. But Jonathan Gannon has been, they've been ascending, I would say, since he came in and dealt with the mess that Kingsbury and the previous regime brought or put him in. I think Monty Austin-Fort's done a great job as the current GM, getting picks and stuff and building up the young talent on the team. I think Will Johnson, bringing him in as your CB1 for the future, is a pretty good look to just help a defense that continues to upgrade, and a defense that has made some investments on that D line and in free agency already. So I think Will Johnson's a good pick here.
Okay, that's Will Johnson's gone. This is where it gets interesting. I really wanted this Bengals pick, so I'm glad I got it. I think there's no question they go defensive line here or edge rusher. And with the board shaping up the way it is, I think they go James Pierce. I think this is where it stops. There's uncertainty with Trey Hendrickson. Even if they get him extended, I think that'd be a perfect place for Pierce to go because he wouldn't have to be the one right away on that edge. Like he'd have Hendrickson across him. Makes so much sense. And personally, as a football fan, I do not want him falling to the Eagles, Lions, or Commanders later because I think Pierce is going to be a special player for years to come. Projected number one pick if we're talking about last season entering this circuit. I don't care how skinny he is. I would take him top 10. I think he's a top 10 talent from this draft. I have him as the edge too still. So, I mean, I don't know that nothing throughout this process has made him fall for me. I think the upside's there. And if I think he goes to a place like the Bengals and they can keep Trey Hendrickson, it only helps him further. So I think that's the pick there.
Yeah, I like that pick. I love James Pierce Jr. a whole lot. It'll be interesting to see how he fits into their scheme, with being a little bit smaller. I mean, he's tall, he's long, he's skinny, as we've mentioned. So it'll be interesting to see how they deploy him early on in his career, whether he's going to be a DPR and just come in and play the pass downs, and kind of come off the field on first and second down for run situations, or if they just let him eat in that situation and just see what he can do, because he was good in college. I mean, he was a pretty good run defender in college for his size. I still think he has the ability to do that. And I hope that he gets an opportunity to do that, so I think it'd be great for the Bengals defense. They, need to provide some help for Joe Burrow in the offense. So they're not, so he doesn't have to throw for 400 yards every game to be in it. But yeah, I'd like that pick.
All right, let's see. What are you doing at the K? Because I've only had one player the last month that has been going to the CS at 18 because the need is so vast for them, and that's Zabel. But I want to see who you pick here with the
Yeah.
board shaping out because Tet's available. They could have an X receiver. They don't really have one. Like Cup and JSN are both slots, right? Like they traded DK. It seems like the obvious pick here, if it shapes up, would be Tet, but I would still go Zabel here. But I'm interested to see where you would go here.
Yeah, so I love Gray Zabel. He's a really good player. I think I would love it if they picked him here as somebody who has Kenneth Walker in Dynasty fantasy football. I think Kenneth Walker is such a good running back that has just struggled with a really, really poor O-line the last couple of years. Just insanely high rate of getting hit in the backfield, just because he doesn't get any help. But John Schneider has not been a guy to invest in the interior O-line early. So ultimately, I'm not going to be going Zabel. I would love it if they picked him here. So, if you're right about that, I'm happy that you're right about that. But with Ted McMillan falling, he's easily in the consideration. Cooper Kupp and JSN, as you mentioned, are very redundant profiles. But Mike McDonald, big defensive guy. I think that he could easily go for upgrades in the trenches. And I think Kenneth Grant is going to be the guy here ultimately. I think you just keep improving that defense and win through the trenches. The Eagles showed that's the recipe, to win Super Bowls, whether it's pass rush or just dominating the trenches in the run game. And Kenneth Grant can be that guy. So
I
that's my
like it.
pick
I
here.
like it. So we'll take Kenneth Grant there. All right, I'll be quick on the next pick. So I had Jalen Walker fall into here in my mock for a long time. I think, at this position, they have so many other receivers, bro. Everyone thinks they could take Ted here. Like, I don't think there's any chance they take Ted. They just re-signed Godwin. They have Mike Evans. Like, to be honest, they have other needs. They had Jalen McMillan was awesome. You don't want two receivers named McMillan as your 1 and 2 either, even though that'd be pretty cool. I could see Ted, but I think they're going to end up going Jahad Campbell here. I think it's pretty obvious
Nice.
that that's the pick. I think
I like that pick too.
yeah, people could say that it's a little too high for a true linebacker, but this dude is like reminds me a lot of Fred Warner in the sense of like the violence he plays with, and just not just that, like the leadership. Like you watch him on the field, he's just everywhere, and like that's you can't put a price on that. So like I think a high first round pick is fine for a guy like Jahad Campbell personally. I don't
I
know.
like Jihad. I like Jihad Campbell a lot. I think he's a very good player. Like he is better than the 19th pick, I would say, when it comes to like talent wise. Like as an overall player in this class, I have him higher than 19. Also, I want to be really quick with this too, because I know that you probably want to get this Tampa pick over, but Todd Bowles, who was there when Bruce Arians was the head coach, who was still the DC when Devin White was young early in his career, who was playing off ball linebacker, he had like 10 sacks or something as a rookie. And Jihad Campbell can easily provide that type of pass rush from off ball linebacker position. So we could see kind of a, hybrid role for Jihad Campbell. And I think he'd be just a great fit for this defense playing next to Levante David. So
I'm with you there. Who are you going to go? So this is an obvious pick. I think we both know if the board shapes up like this, the Broncos will select Ted McMillan, right?
No, that's not who I was going to take here.
Whoa, Hampton?
I think it's Hampton. Yeah, I'm going Hampton. Yeah, I mean, honestly, if McMillan's falling like this, ultimately, I think it would probably be a team that trades to make this pick. Or I've heard that the 20s are kind of where the receiver run is going to get going, but I know the Broncos are interested in Hampton. Um, I don't think that they perceive X wide receiver as a big need with Sutton there. And, kind of a group of young players around that with Franklin and Mims and Devon Vela, who they are higher on, I think, than a lot of kind of most people are. So yeah, I think Hampton's probably the pick. They need to rejuvenate that run game for sure, and they've been linked to him. I don't think 20's too early for him. I think that's probably who they go with.
I think so. Pick 21. I'm going to be super quick with it too, because I want to be off of here by 6:20. So I want to I know the first few picks were quick with it, but this
Yeah.
one I think if he's on the board, which I do think he will, I know they're going to sign Aaron Rodgers, but I think they're going to take Jackson Dart here. I
Wow.
get if Tet falls. I get if Tet falls. I get if guys like Jade Barron falls like this in this simulation. We haven't even seen the two dominant safeties yet in this mock, and Emin and Starks, who both probably go first round. But I think at this point, no receivers yet. Pittsburgh, they just got DK, so I don't think they're going to take Tet McMillan unless they were already going to trade George Pickens, which they haven't. Tet plays a lot like
Three X receivers would
you
be
can't have
crazy.
3X receivers, bro. I was gonna say, I was like,
Yeah.
they'd be the last team to take Tet probably. Like I could see Agbuka if Dart's off the board, or Burden or somebody like that, and that would be a solid pick. But I think they have so many other needs, and one of them is getting a young quarterback who can actually be good at football. And I think Dart, that would be a perfect place if they end up inevitably signing Aaron Rodgers, learning from Aaron. We know like Aaron gets a lot of shit, but he did a good job helping Jordan Love. Like, and that was well documented by Jordan too. Like Jordan was like, Aaron helped me a lot. Like he ended up being better about the process than people thought. And I think like he would undoubtedly do the same thing with Dart. Like that's just who Aaron is. Like he's kind of crazy, but he'll also like put his ego aside sometimes to help younger quarterbacks because he was in that position. And I don't think he had anybody to help him really at first, and because we know who his mentor was, and I get like he probably helped him a little bit, but wasn't the greatest guy as mentor. Well, I can't say that he has Parkinson's now, right, or whatever. So, but you know what I'm talking about. I don't think he's in prison right now, Brett Favre. But let's
No.
go back to this though,
Yeah,
because this is
Chargers. I think this is where the fall ends. This is a good spot for him. Put him next to Lad McConkey. You got Ted McMillan going here. Would be great for Justin Herbert. This would be awesome. I think you got McMillan, who can be your true X. You take QJ out of that responsibility of needing to be your downfield threat because that's not really where he excels. His best thing is getting design touches. And if you could put him inside in the slot or put him, as the Z, and if you want to put McConkey in the slot, you got a good group of 3 talented players at wide receiver. I think this would be amazing for Herbert and would really provide him with just some good young weapons going forward, and it'd be good for McMillan too, getting a really good quarterback to throw him the football. I like this landing spot.
Yeah, I'm with you there. I think that would be the pick if he's there. If Loveland's gone, which he is, and Warren, I mean, that's the obvious pick. They could go James Pierce if he falls there, or Kenneth Grant. This pick, I think, becomes extremely obvious. I'm not even going to spend time talking about it. They're taking Jahdae Barron if he falls there. Like, there's been a lot of talk about, Jair and if he's going to end up leaving eventually. I mean, it's inevitable it's a matter of when, not if, right? Like, and how many good years left does Jair have anyways? They have needs at corner. I don't think their other corners are all that good personally. I mean, there's some people could say otherwise. I think that Jahdae would be an excellent player on the Packers. Honestly, I think that's got to be the pick, don't you? If he's there,
I think that this would be a great pick. I think that he'd be a major contributor on the defense. The Packers defense was pretty sneaky good last year. They took the ball away a lot. Xavier McKinney was an amazing free agent signing. So if you add another guy who is good at taking the ball away, pretty good factor in the run defense at the nickel spot, I would love this pick for them. I just really like Jahdae Barron. So we got the Vikings next year now at 24.
yeah.
I'm between a couple guys here. Gray Zabel's probably in the running a little bit too, but he's not who I'm considering. I'm between Derek Harmon and Nick Emenwari here. These are 2 guys who they've been linked to, I know, and the positional need. They have more of a need for Emenwari, and what Brian Flores could turn Emenwari into is just exciting to me. The athlete that he is and Brian Flores' creativity on defense and his ability to move guys around like chess pieces. And when you have the athlete that Nick Emenwari is, man, that would be so exciting. But I feel like they're leaning more into the trenches right now. So I think I'm going to go with Harmon here. I think I'm going to take Derek Harmon. And I think that'd be a good pick. I think that Harmon probably will provide more value to the team at that position than Emenwari, unless Flores just unlocks him as just the ultimate like defensive chess piece type player. Yeah, exactly. And Flores is, like I said, I think he's probably one of the best defensive minds in football right now. So I would love that pick, but I don't think you can go wrong with Derek Harmon. I just don't think he's going to get a lot of play time right away with their D-line and the shape that it's in.
That's fine. We know Javon Hargrave and Allen are pretty much washed anyways. Those were bad long term. They can't defend the run, but luckily they have other D linemen that can defend the run. So those are pass defense. Those are pass rush guys. So this pick's pretty obvious. I think you know who I'm going to pick here. Josh Simmons. Like, I get he's hurt, but like Igbuka's here, Golden's here, Burns here, whatever. Yes, they need another receiver. They're either going receiver or O-line. That's a guarantee. Doesn't matter who falls. I think at this point they have to take Josh Simmons there and just bet on his upside. They don't have enough on their line, personally. What are your thoughts there?
Yeah, I think that they are pretty desperate for some help on that O-line. They're kind of just full reset on the O-line now, trading Tunsil and who else is it they lost? Like Shaq Mason, I think maybe. So
they lost everybody, bro.
Yeah, so they need some help there. That's for sure. I was thinking Golden would be an option there, probably. With another receiver. But Yeah, I think that I'm going to be taking Matthew Golden here for the Rams at 26. They have been linked
Wow.
to him a little bit. I think that this could be Dart if he was still available. He's not. Could be Milrow potentially. They might be looking into finding Stafford's replacement, but I don't know. Milrow doesn't really seem like Sean McVay's type of quarterback. I think that Matthew Golden's going to provide you that take the top off the defense type play at wide receiver with his speed. I don't really, I'm not super high on Matthew Golden. This is not, I would not take him here. But the Rams are interested in him, I know, and they don't really have that vert threat wide receiver. Devontae Adams is not that anymore at all. Puka can be that, but you don't really want to use him as that because he can excel in other roles. So I think that Matthew Golden, I think this is a good landing spot for him where he can play with Stafford and just catch bombs and grow learning from Puka and Devontae Adams. Is kind
I
of
love it.
makes Tutu Atwell replaces Tutu Atwell, but who they just paid $10 million, but they've been linked to Golden. So
You want to guess who I pick here? Now, personally, if I was GM, I would pick a wide receiver. I would take Burden here, and I would or Higgins or somebody. They really need an X, so I would probably take Jaden Higgins there. But I'm not the GM. They are going to go Nick Emenwari.
Wow.
And pair him with Kyle Hamilton. I think that's unfair, but that's what's, I think, inevitable to happen. I do think Emenwari falls there. Obviously, Starks is still on the board, but imagine like Kyle Hamilton and Nick Emenwari together.
Yeah.
Bro, unreal. I think that's the pick there. So I don't know. What are your thoughts there? And then tell me, Lions have a boatload of options at this point with the way this draft is playing out.
Yeah, that's exciting for sure. Emenwari onto being added into that defense is an interesting proposition. It's exciting. The size at safety would be crazy with him and Hamilton. But the Lions, I'm going to go with Gray Zabel here. He is the guy who they've been linked to. That's kind of seems like he's at the top of the board right now. And they lost. Who did they lose on the O-line? Kevin Zietler, I think, one of their guards.
They lost him, and they lost Jackson a few years ago.
Yeah, so Gray Zabel perfectly fits into that spot. He is a grinder. He's a Dan Campbell type offensive lineman, in my opinion. This is just a really good fit. I like potentially maybe Jack Sawyer here too, but I think Zabel, top guy left that they have that they've been linked to, in my opinion.
I think having an Ohio State edge rusher and a Michigan edge rusher on both sides would be crazy because they would freaking hate each other. But yeah, we'll go Zabel there. 29. Now you have a boatload of options here. I have in my mock them taking Hampton here at 29, but Hampton's obviously off the board here, and I don't think they're going to take Henderson. They have a needed edge rusher. They signed Javon Kinlaw, which was a horrible sign, but they're not going to take Walter Nolan. Though I think it's crazy he's still on the board. They have Debo, who Burden plays a lot like. I'm going to go Igbuka with that pick. I know they have Luke McCaffrey, but obviously he didn't get much PT last year. They lost Brown, right? Diami Brown left.
Yeah, right? He went to the Jaguars. He got paid a lot.
He's pretty good, dude. He had good playoffs. He ended up being it was hilarious that Amon-Ra was always talking shit, and then he ended up eliminating Amon-Ra, and having that huge game. But I do think that Igbuka makes a lot of sense. Slot guy, someone they really need. I get McLaurin can be used primarily anywhere, but he's more of a downfield threat. I think Igbuka can do a bunch, line up anywhere, similar to Debo. I think would be another threat, and I think at this point they got to go all in an offense and just hope their defense holds up, because I don't think they have the personnel, but they didn't last year and they made an NFC Championship. So I still hate their defensive personnel, especially their D-line. I think it's one of the worst in the league. So personally, again, I love obviously Luvu and some of the guys, but they were, I think, last against the run or close to it in the NFL last season. So you could definitely build the trenches and take Nolan here, or the edge rusher from Boston College, whose name I cannot pronounce, but I've watched a lot of tape on. But I think they will go Emeka Egbuka if this plays out like that. Yeah. What are your thoughts at 30 for Buffalo?
So I was between two guys. I think I narrowed down the decision to one. But the two guys that I'm considering here, I think the Bills are going trenches, pretty guaranteed, based on just based on if the board goes like this. I think the top guys left that they've been linked to are Walter Nolan and Landon Jackson. Ultimately, I want Landon Jackson here, but I think that there's more of a need on the interior than there is on the edge. They just signed Joey Bosa. Don't really know how much he's going to give them. He gets hurt a lot. He's been hurt a lot the last few years. They have AJ Epinesa still, who's pretty nice. And then they just signed Michael Hoyt also from the Rams. So I think I'm going to go with Walter Nolan, who I think could be, I mean, he's falling, could be a major value at 30. And, you know, we'll see how that works out for Buffalo if that's the way they go.
Yeah, it's an awesome pick. It really is. I think he shouldn't fall to 30. I'd personally take him at 11 over Mikal Williams if it was between those two. But 30, that's a steal there. Here's where it gets interesting because they don't need to have a need for safety. And Stark's fallen out of the first round is crazy, and he's probably an Eagle at this point with your last pick. They're not going to take Burden. They have too many receivers. Everyone's like, "Oh, Kansas City's going to take a receiver." Dude, they have Rasheed and they have Xavier Worthy. They're not taking a receiver. I think this pick is pretty obvious. I think they're going to go Josh Connerly. They just have such a need at tackle. Jawan Taylor sucks. Jalen Moore, the guy they got from the Niners, isn't that good. He's okay. So I think they have to get another tackle. And I'm not a big Connerly guy, but I think, you know, he's obviously the best tackle there, right? Like Booker, I could see, but he's a guard. I could see Booker, but still, I think they go Connerly there.
You stole my pick, man. That's who I was going to go with, the Eagles here at 32.
Damn.
Yeah, I think the Chiefs have a real bad need, obviously, at tackle. Yeah, I think a sneaky option for the Chiefs there at 31 would be Travion Henderson. I think that they desperately need to get better in the run game. So I would love that at 31. But yeah, I mean, you can't go wrong at offensive tackle. And Connerly is, you know, probably the best guy. Maybe Ursary. I don't know that he's going to go that high though. But now at 32, that's given me a tough choice here for the Eagles. I think that based on who they have been linked to, I think I'm going to go with Donovan Iziraku here from Boston College.
Wow.
They don't really have a huge need on the edge, but you can never have too many really good edge rushers. And if they have a high grade on him, they've had him in for visits. I think that there's a real chance that he goes here to the Eagles, and he is their type of edge rusher too. And that kind of that smaller, like linebacker type body, like Nolan Smith and Zach Bond. Even though Zach Bond moved to linebacker last year, but yeah, I think that Iziraku is a Eagles type player. They just signed Josh Uche, and then Ojulari. They signed Aziz Ojulari. So they got a bunch of those athlete type smaller edge rushers, and we'll see who wins out in camp from that group of guys. But yeah, I think that's probably my pick here.
Cool. So with this mock specifically, that concludes the first round. We'll do a first and second round one, or just maybe a second round one in our next because we just did the first. But as you can see here, guys falling out of the first: Luther Burden, Jaden Higgins, two really good receivers. Malachi Starks falling to round 2, which is pretty unfathomable, but like it happens. Darius Alexander falling out of round 1, Jack Sawyer, Tyler Booker, Trey Amos, like there's Savon Revel, like there's a lot of guys that fall. But again, this will be available on YouTube right after it uploads automatically, and then it will be we'll go back on here next week and do either round 2, depending on what Lucas thinks, or going back to what we would do, because I would have Jaden Higgins. I don't know, man. I think Jaden Higgins might be the best wide receiver in the draft, not named Travis Hunter. I know you're a big tech guy, but I think
I like Higgins.
I'm all in.
I like
I'm all
Higgins,
in.
but
You give me all the stock in the world and you put a gun to my head, you're like, who's going to be the superstar of these receivers? I would say Jaden Higgins. So I think whoever gets him is getting a steal. And I'd want him primarily to go to a place that can help him develop. But thank you, Lucas, for your time. We'll talk more about this, and we'll have this posted on